Did you go to that join audio or whatever?
Oh shit.
All right, so we'll go ahead and get started. My name is Matt Caddo. I'm the Senior Fellow in Public Policy with the American Kratom Association. Welcome to all of you to this webinar this evening. We wanted to talk about some of the bills that are now moving their way through the legislative process at the state level, particularly in Florida. But there obviously are a lot of states where we're active, we're having to defend the against the attempts by some to ban kratom products. So maybe we'll start just by giving you some recaps of things that are current news that are happening. Uh, in the state of Texas, the Attorney General, Ken Paxton, has finally started taking action against 708 manufacturers and announced a lawsuit against one of the smoke shops and suppliers of 708 products in the state of Texas with a commitment that he's going to expand that effort throughout the state. And we think that that's something that needs to be done in order to bring clarity to the marketplace. We've known that since September of 2023 that these 708 products have been on the marketplace deceiving consumers, promising that they are kratom products when in fact they're anything but. And so we think this is a great effort by the Texas Attorney General in terms of his efforts to bring in to control these 708 products and to rein in some of these egregious marketing practices that are being laid out there for consumers to be deceived. So that's great news. We also are seeing that there's some efforts at the state level to attempt to ban 708 products. We welcome that legislation. There's obviously along the way a lot of confusion about these products, whether or not you can properly identify a natural kratom leaf substance versus the 708 products. That was a discussion that took place in a Utah hearing today, where I believe that the department misrepresented the ability of their being able to identify the distinct difference between these products. But all of that is wrapped into this desire to try to create a ban on natural kratom leaf products or extract products. And I think that that distinction is important when we look at the natural kratom leaf products and then properly extracted naturally products where you use only FDA approved food grade solvents that limits the enhanced potency of a extract product. And certainly we have from day one limited the amount of the solvents or the kinds of solvents that can be used. And that's evidenced in our Kratom Consumer Protection Acts, where we put a limit that you use USP 467, which essentially says you only use food grade FDA approved solvents in order to extract for those products. And sadly, in Utah, that distinction was ignored, misrepresented, even by some of the department officials at the Utah Department of Agriculture and Food. And they know better on that score, but I think they were playing to the sponsor of the bill that was heard in the House committee today. And unfortunately, that bill was moved out to the floor. So we'll have to take our battle there to bring clarity to those issues. In the state of Washington, we're seeing some very positive movement where the so-called Kratom Consumer Protection Act that was advanced by Representative Reeves was anything but, because it was so over-regulatory. It established a regulatory scheme that's very similar to cannabis, where you essentially have to have a dispensary. We certainly didn't support that. We want to work with Representative Reeves going forward, where we can get a more appropriate regulatory scheme. But that's something we have to be another session, because that bill is essentially restricted under their executive order program that they have there, and it's not moving forward. There's always the possibility that legislation in the state of Washington can be resurrected, but not likely here. There is a bill that is moving forward there, which imposes a tax of 95% on kratom products, which obviously is ridiculously burdensome, but they're looking for money. And someone just found that kratom was a good target on this in terms of their quest for money. But we're confident we're going to be able to show exactly what's going on there in terms of being able to have appropriate regulations in the state of Washington going forward. In the state of Idaho, it looks like the Kratom Consumer Protection Act will be filed here in just a couple of days, probably on Thursday, and we'll start to see the movement in the state of Idaho go forward. So we're grateful for that. In the state of California, we know that there is an ongoing battle with the Department of Public Health, and now they've recruited the alcohol uh, regulatory agency into the battle, and they're out and about seizing Kratom products and advising Kratom retailers that they're not to be selling Kratom products. While that's happening, you've got the legislature moving forward with AB 1088, which is Assemblywoman Bain's bill, and another bill by Senator Umberg, which has now been changed from being a ban on 7-OH, but now gives a regulatory requirements around it. And we're looking forward to an informational hearing that will be scheduled on the 18th of February at 1:30 in Sacramento, where the experts will have a chance to provide information that will inform legislators about what the appropriate regulatory scheme is. And we hope that, excuse me, we hope that that will result in their giving advice to the regulatory agencies about what the appropriate level of restrictions on kratom should be in the state of California. We're seeing a lot of local county efforts there, and it's a hand-to-hand combat situation that's going on at the current time in those states. We're seeing ban bills pop up in South Dakota, North Dakota, in Iowa, and Kansas. We're seeing that in Pennsylvania. We've obviously had one that we've been dealing with for quite a while in New Jersey. We know that there's a ban bill in Connecticut, which we're successfully kind of slowing down. And now we're going to have the legislature look at what was a precipitous decision that was made at the end of the last session, where the Department of Consumer Affairs inappropriately listed metrogenine as one of the substances that should be on Schedule 1. And hopefully we're going to be able to unwind that along the way. And these bills keep piling up as we go forward. I think there was a ban bill filed in Mississippi where we already have a KCPA. So these are battles and new fronts of battles that we're going to have to engage in as we go forward here. So these are difficult times, but it's essential that as we go forward here, that we're going to be able to win these battles, to be able to appropriately regulate kratom, natural leaf kratom, and appropriately formulated kratom extract products. I was interviewed today by a news reporter who couldn't differentiate between natural kratom leaf and 7-OH and really didn't want to hear or learn about what those differences were. And it became a difficult interview because they just wanted to pursue a narrative that had already been cooked up in their mind about how natural kratom leaf has the same safety profile as 7-OH, which we know isn't true. And it was interesting that when I described to her the FDA's dose finding study, that was a human safety trial involving 40 participants, split where two of each of the cohorts included the placebo uh, individual who was receiving plant material but not kratom. And the part of the outcome of that was that they got to 12 grams, where at that level in a 5 minute period, which is a huge amount of kratom in that time period, they only found two of the 40 people that participated in that human safety study, dose finding study on natural kratom leaf products that experienced nausea, which is not considered by any standard to be a serious adverse event. But at that level, without seeing any adverse events, the FDA called off the study and said the kratom appears to be well tolerated at all dose levels. So all of that's critically important in the evaluation of what safe products are in the kratom space versus unsafe products. And that's something that obviously we're going to continue to work on and pursue as we go forward. In the state of Florida, we have a very interesting situation in that everyone knows that there was a rule that was proposed and enacted by the Attorney General, which said that any amount of 7-OH that was greater than 400 parts per million by dry weight was banned. And this was a problematic level for us because it was a little bit too tight, because there are some raw materials that needed to be transported and stored prior to finished product manufacturing that were implicated at that standard level. And so we've been negotiating with the AG's office, but the rule had to be obviously adjudicated by the legislature in the form of legislation. And there's apparently a political disagreement or battle between the AG's office and some people in the House of Representatives there in Florida. And so we have a real battle that's going on, and it doesn't look like the House is willing to move on the AG's bill, which obviously is a problem for us. The AG has responded by saying that they likely will just renew the rule, which was in place for a year, and then they would just renew it. So this will be an interesting confrontation. We're hopeful that we can negotiate around that and get the legislature to enact a responsible kratom, the 7-OH ban, and regulating kratom raw leaf material in a responsible way. Still to be seen how that will play out. They're currently, they currently have a proposed hearing on Thursday, which may get delayed depending on some negotiations that are going on right now. And so you can expect to hear back from us here in the next day or so as to whether or not that hearing actually is going to take place. These are the problem in Florida is that it's ground zero for some of the 7-OH large manufacturers that are producing 7-OH products, and they have flooded the state with 7-OH products and a lot of cash that's being flooded into the coffers of various lawmakers. And that's, of course, created an environment where there's people trying to strip out 7-OH regulations in those bills. And that's an unfortunate part of the process when one 7-OH manufacturer can put up nearly $1 million in campaign contributions and contributions to PACs in the state of Florida. Then you start to see the fabric of responsible regulations starts to shred. And unfortunately, that's where we are today. But these 7-OH manufacturers are cash rich, and they're willing to spend this money, and it corrupts the political system in a real way in terms of being able to evaluate all of these issues. But we'll let everyone know how this progresses in Florida. We want to protect, obviously, the marketplace where it allows for kratom bars to continue to exist without the kinds of onerous regulations that the Florida Department of Agriculture wants to put on them. That's a trick bag that we have to navigate around. And we want to make sure that the natural kratom leaf products are available with appropriate labeling and packaging to be sold in the state of Florida without the interference of the the Florida Department of Agriculture from just coming in and harassing vendors because they don't comply with whatever specific regulation that the Department of Agriculture is trying to implement. And we obviously think that the state statute is the way to draw those parameters clearly that the Department of Agriculture cannot violate. But the current status that the Florida Department of Agriculture is helping us with is that they will probably stick a very high fiscal note on the bills that really are being gutted now on the 7-OH side. And so that'll be helpful to us as we go forward. So I think the best way to proceed here is for everyone to just put questions in the Q&A chat, and we can go forward, and I'll describe as best I can some of these other states where we're seeing activity that needs to be brought up. Stephen asked, can you say what step in the BOP process is for metrogeny in Ohio? Should we be contacting the Board of Pharmacy or JCAR at this point, along with legislators for the KCPA? So this is an interesting situation that's developed in Ohio. And by way of background, the governor, by executive order, directed the Board of Pharmacy to issue an emergency rule on 7-OH, which they did. They conflated it in their description of what the parameters around what 7-OH was to include metrogeny, which we thought was unfortunate. They had to issue a clarification that they weren't talking about natural kratom leaf products. There is a second rule using regular rulemaking procedures that would ban metrogenine or mitragynine from classified as a Schedule 1 substance. So obviously we're fighting hard against that. The timing of when you will need to be able to react beyond what the Board of Pharmacy is doing, which everyone hopefully got their comments in by the January 28th deadline. But we're also going to have a hearing process before the Board of Pharmacy, and then it will go over to the Joint Committee on Agency Review at the legislature, the JCAR committee, and we're going to want to make sure that we're heard in a separate hearing that will be there. And it is incumbent upon every kratom consumer to try to make arrangements to get to Columbus and participate in these hearings, because we beat it last time 2 or 3 years ago, and now we need to be able to replicate that effort as we go forward here. It'll be really important to have responsible kratom consumers standing up for the freedom they have to make decisions, informed decisions about their health and well-being. So we're going to keep everyone posted, obviously, on what's happening in Ohio. The second part of this rulemaking process, where it goes through regular rulemaking, will apply to a ban on metrogenine if we don't stop it. And so it'll be critically important for your assistance in getting out there. The timing of when to contact the Board of Pharmacy and then JCAR will be dictated by the schedule that they produce, and we'll keep everyone updated with emails through that process. Jennifer said that she saw that there was a Consumer Protection Act introduced in Tennessee. When we are reaching out to legislators, should we ask for their support of these bills and oppose the ban bills from Helton Haynes? Absolutely oppose the ban bills from Helton Haynes. I think that the new bill, that's the Kratom Consumer Protection Act, will appropriately address the problem of kratom in the state of Tennessee, but it's like a real push that Representative Helton Haynes is putting on to try to demonize kratom, and that's something we're going to have to obviously work hard on. Steve said, I was told that I had to label my product in milligrams instead of ppm when it comes to 7-OH. Have you heard anything on this? This is a difficult area where the way that consumers typically understand the content of products is in milligrams. And then when the Florida AG's office came out with the 400 parts per million by dry weight, too restrictive, but required that on the labeling, that made it difficult. And now we have a more rational view that has been passed out of the House Judiciary Committee in Arizona, where they set that level at 800 parts per million. So I think that's exactly the right space to be in, but we're going to have to deal with these more restrictive 7-OH content, and in this case in Florida, the 400 parts per million by dry weight. So ongoing tension back and forth. We're going to have to advocate for bills that allow for consumers to reasonably able to determine what the safe products are, and that's not by parts per million along the way. So we'll keep you posted on that, and we're going to continue to work hard on getting good labeling that allows consumers to have informed choices on these products. What is going on in Pennsylvania? Is that a local or state ban? Both. We're working with our lobbyists there in Pennsylvania and with our sponsor of the KCPA, and we're aggressively trying to push back against the bans. But the executive agencies are the ones promoting the bans, and we're watching that closely. It's not a great situation in the state of Pennsylvania right now. Egon asked, will you please clarify what you meant when you mentioned that the bills in Florida were being gutted for 7-OH and how that relates to the high fiscal note for the Florida Department of Agriculture? Appreciate more context. So the House has gutted the Attorney General's bill banning 7-OH. And that was because of the enormous amount of money that's been invested by the 7-OH manufacturers, and because of an ongoing feud between some members of the House and the Attorney General. So that's really has nothing to do with us, but it's we're the victims of it when it goes through. So those bills will get fought out, and if the legislature refuses in the House side to accept the level, the rule making authority of the Attorney General, then he says he'll just reinstitute another rule and keep it in effect until the next legislative session. So that's where it is now. On the bills that are designed that are currently being deliberated on in the legislature, the fiscal note that will be assessed by the Department of Agriculture has a lot to do with whether bills pass or not. And it's my understanding that the gutted bill that has more regulations on kratom will have a very high fiscal note, and it's not likely to pass in that fashion. So we'll have to see how that works. Steve says in Florida we have 200 parts per million on our can, and we had a Department of Agriculture come in with a new conversion calculator. They told me that we needed to have 140 milligrams of 7-hydro. That's a ton of 7-hydro. I thought as long as we were under 400 parts per million, we were good. I think you are too, Steve. Contact Stephanie in at the American Kratom Association, and let's set up a call where we can talk about this, because that sounds to be a little bit off to me as well. And we need to make sure that we are going to appropriately regulate 7-hydroxymetrogenine, whatever they finally arrive at as the standard. And certainly if you have 200 parts per million, that should be something that they accept. So uh, but we need to figure that out. And if they, I can't imagine they said that you need to have 140 milligrams of 7-hydroxy. That's crazy. So we need to talk about that. Um, Mel said, "Can you elaborate on the Texas AG lawsuit?" So today, the Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton announced that he was filing a lawsuit to enforce the regulations under the Texas KCPA, which where 7-OH products are violating, and it is the first of what he is promising to go after any 7-OH retailer or manufacturer in the state of Texas. So you can expect to see a lot more enforcement in that area. And if any retailer selling 7-OH products, they'd be well advised to get rid of them, because the Texas AG is about to rain hell on their heads. And that's a good thing in our opinion, but it's the reality of what to do. Erica says, "Do we stand a chance in Kansas City, Missouri tomorrow morning?" The answer is yes. The newly announced regulation is actually targeting 7-OH. It's a great bill for kratom, where before they were trying to ban all kratom. And I think that if the bill, as it has now been revised, is what passes, it will be a great thing for us in Kansas City. So thank you for raising that issue. I think it's a pretty significant advancement from where we were, where the mayor was trying to ban all kratom products just a couple of weeks ago. So we've been working hard with the mayor's office and multiple contacts by people that are not only local to the area, but also people that have product that they sell in that area. And so they have some pretty good standing to go in and argue that the Kansas City is going too far. And of course, it has implications for Missouri overall, because we want to make sure that we pass legislation in the state of Missouri that appropriately regulates 7-OH and provides a regulatory scheme for natural kratom leaf products that protects consumers who responsibly use it. So that's really our goal as we're going forward with that. Now, that's the end of the questions that I've seen so far. I'm going to give you a minute to just add any additional questions that you have. And while we're doing that, I'll tell you a little bit about the federal KCPA. As everyone knows, the problem that we're running into with many of these state executive branch agencies is their reliance upon the FDA and Kratom webpage, which has specific language that essentially says that no kratom product can be sold as, and then they list all of these categories that appear to ban any kratom product for any purpose, when in actuality it doesn't exactly do that, but it's so damning that it is being used by these agencies, particularly in the state of California, for example, where they use the nexus of federal law to their California law, which essentially gives them authority over food products. And now they've expanded it to the Alcohol Bureau to enforce against kratom products. So Therein lies our problem, and we're working hard in trying to convince the remove the particularly onerous language in the FDA and Kratom webpage for a variety of reasons, including the fact that it doesn't align with the FDA commissioner's uh, own statements about 7OH being bad and subject to scheduling. And you've got the natural kratom leaf products, which the commissioner says is not the focus of the FDA. And yet, when you read the FDA and kratom webpage, it's exactly the focus of the FDA, and it's being misinterpreted and abused by many of these state agencies and local health departments as well. So it is a high priority for the AKA to continue to push the FDA to realign the language in their FDA and Kratom webpage to update the science and to align with the commissioner's statements along the way. Uh, there are California is one state, Michigan, Minnesota are both doing it. New Mexico's doing it. And I expect other states will join suit unless we can get the FDA to make this change. It's a needed change. It's perfectly justified along the way. And so there's no basis for the kinds of restrictions that are currently being imposed because of that website. In the state of California, they actually were delivering notices to retailers and handing them a copy, a Xerox copy of the FDA and Kratom webpage, which tells you how absurdly reliant they are upon the language in that website, which doesn't meet the standard. The good news is that when you see the movement by Secretary Kennedy and Commissioner McCary, and then you saw last week where in the Oval Office, when President Trump was announcing his addiction initiative, Commissioner McCary stepped forward and reassured the president that the FDA was taking steps to regulate these highly synthesized and dangerous 7OH products, and pointed to Attorney General Bondi and said, and we're working with the Department of Justice to get this done. It's not coming soon enough. We'd like the scheduling of 7OH to take place because that would relieve a lot of the burden that's going on there. So I think that's pretty important, and we're going to continue to try to push a rational framework for this kind of regulation along the way. Um, and some additional questions. Where do I find Stephanie's contact information? It's staylor at americankratom.org. That's STAYLOR, staylor at americankratom.org. Stephen said, is there some standard for identifying 7OH products we can promote to city councilors or field code enforcement when they say they can't differentiate them? Like if the dose of 7OH per serving is greater than 1 milligram, you automatically know it's not compliant. I'd imagine one exists, but we don't know precisely what's best to say. So this is a great question, and it's in our current model KCPA, we call for no greater than 2% of the overall fraction of the alkaloids in the kratom product can be 7OH. Anything above that is synthesized, and we're adding in and no greater than 1 milligram, because the conversion table for the 2%, anything over 1 milligram per serving is a synthesized 7OH product. So we're working to provide that language in our current KCPAs as we go forward here. But it has been a little bit of a problem for us as people express the view that they can't tell the difference. That's one of the common refrains we hear, that how do our people know what the difference is? There is a test for 7OH, and there's obviously a test for metrogenine. So it's just a matter of giving proper instructions and to align the regulatory scheme in these individual health departments to help them understand how they can make the test and how they can observe on the labeling itself to have an affirmative conclusion that that's a non-compliant product going forward. Misty said, what does it mean that McKell's bill was circled in Utah? Utah and some other states do the same thing. They have a process in the passage of legislation where every bill has to be read 3 times. And so when they get to the second or third reading, it can be circled, which means that it's a temporary pause on the review of that legislative initiative. And in this case, Senator McKell's bill was circled on third reading, and the idea is that they're going to try to marry both Senator Vickers' bill, which is a ban on 7-OH, but not on natural kratom leaf, and let the two bills go out together over to the House. And that's where that process then will be restarted in the House, where they can have uh, they can have a specific review of both of those bills. This has been extremely frustrating in Utah because there are well-intentioned people that are just getting it wrong, and we need to ramp up our efforts. Thank you to everyone who's been participating in the hearings, particularly today. I thought the testimony was great. It fell on deaf ears, but that's political rather than reality. And we're on track now to interdict these bills on the House floor. Uh, Egon asked, are there any updates on the federal scheduling of 7-OH? If significant resources are being used to protect it at state level, are you aware of similar efforts or developments occurring at the federal level? So the DEA currently has the recommendation from the HHS and the FDA to schedule 7-OH. That has generated a onslaught of material that's being submitted by the 7-OH groups to try to convince the DEA that they should not be scheduling 7-OH. So that's an ongoing review, and the DEA is obligated to conduct their review of it. But I can tell you, having seen and heard descriptions of the scientific evidence that's being relied upon by the 7-OH industry, the DA is going to come to the right conclusion, which is that there is no basis for 7-OH to be allowed to be sold to American consumers because of the safety threat that's associated with it. I suppose that one of the difficulties that they're running into, and based on some pretty good evidence that reports I've heard, is the DEA is not convinced that the FDA's recommendation for the scheduling of follow-on synthetic products like pseudodoxil or chemically manipulated products like MGM 15 and 16, that they don't have sufficient evidence and data that would allow them to specifically schedule those synthesized or chemically manipulated follow-on products to 7-OH. They believe they have the requisite information for 7-OH from the FDA, but not for these others. So that's part of the evaluation process that slowed them down a little bit. The kratom danger awareness people are touting the fact that they had their scheduling recommendation on metrogenine accepted by the DEA for review. And so everyone understands the process. Anyone can petition the FDA or the DEA, I'm sorry, to actually do a review of a substance for Schedule 1 designation. So that's a process that happens. Once received, and if the technical requirements for the submission are met, which is not a very high burden, then the material is then submitted to the FDA and to the National Institutes on Drug Abuse in order to evaluate and make a recommendation back. And so that is very early in the process. It is a long, laborious process. So we just have to watch it play out, but it's not likely to be something that you'll see soon and going forward. The DEA hopefully will get to the temporary scheduling of 7-OH sooner rather than later. We think they're long overdue, and it's largely because obviously we want to make sure that 7-OH gets banned, so there's clarity in the states that we're talking to about the danger levels of 7-OH versus natural kratom leaf products and properly extracted products. So that's where we are going with this, and we want to make sure that the language that's currently expressed in obviously the FDA and Kratom webpage gets appropriately modified, and then we can bring some clarity to this. And then, of course, with the scheduling recommendation, we'll obviously validate what the FDA has said about 7-OH. So that combination will be very useful to us, and then that will help inform a review of the federal KCPA, which will be again refiled here as soon as we can get it done. We're continuing to negotiate with stakeholders in Washington, primarily in the dietary supplement industry, to try to find language that we can both agree to that won't just lead to a defeat. And so that's something that we're working on. Misty says that Nathan Olson said in her live stream comments that you're a natural treasure and a walking kratom encyclopedia, and that you should write a historical and sociological book on the matter. Well, thank you for the compliment. Don't have time to write a book on this because we're fighting every day. And while I'm home today, I'm going to be on the road again. Last week, I was on the road the whole week. The week before that, I was in Bangkok, Thailand, at a international kratom conference. And just to give you a little bit of perspective on what's happening in Thailand, the government that was just reelected in their election, and I say reelected because it's a very complicated process, but the current prime minister, Newton, was the health minister when I first went to Thailand and petitioned the government to remove the ban on kratom. And the then health minister, Newton, agreed that it was the appropriate thing to do because the only basis for the ban on kratom back from 1943 in the country of Thailand was economic, because American pharmaceutical companies came in and said, we'll offer you, we'll buy any poppy plant that you can produce. And so the Thai government decided that they wanted to make that revenue. And so they ordered everyone to cut down their kratom trees and start doing poppy plants. There's the challenge that we had there. But the health minister, Newton, who's now the prime minister, now just newly reelected, and Justice Minister Somsek, who is now the health minister, both agreed that kratom should be deregulated and not banned. And they accomplished that over a 2-year period. And now Prime Minister Newton, who has a great understanding of kratom, who understands that it's not appropriately banned, has been helping to focus the government on setting up a regulatory system that really has traceability back to the plant that the kratom grows on. And that's something the FDA likes. And I visited there as a part of that international conference, and two significant things happened. One, it was absolutely clear that they have a magnificent processing facility. So they have plantations of kratom trees, not wild in the jungle. Those leaves are then dried and processed in excellent conditions, and then a top-notch processing facility grinds it into powder and produces it for export to the United States. And the goal of the Thai government is to have a green channel, meaning that they will certify to the FDA the quality and wholesomeness of the raw materials so that they will not be subject to the import alert. And we think that's fantastic. And that's where we're going. When I was there, they talked about the fact that Prime Minister Newton was facing a tough reelection, but they were hopeful that it would happen. And as it turns out, it was a landslide victory in the number of seats in the parliament that then allow for the election of the prime minister. And Prime Minister Newton's party won an extraordinary number of seats that was unexpected. And so while he'll have to form a coalition government, he'll have the upper hand in doing that. And so he'll be ensconced in a 4-year term. And his pro-kratom policies, with a focus on appropriate regulatory schemes that will protect the quality of that material for shipment, is magnificent. The other thing that they told me was that they had the Minister of Justice, when I met with him on the second day of this conference, pulled me aside and said that he was shutting down 7-OH manufacturing facilities. And he identified that they were being sponsored by Vietnamese and Chinese investments, and an American, and if not one, maybe two of these programs that are really producing this crap for the global marketplace on 7-OH, and to obviously feed the American demand. So they're taking affirmative steps to shut them down, and thought that was absolutely fabulous. So great progress in Thailand in terms of a commitment to quality raw materials that can be shipped to the United States with a minimal amount of potential risk for E. coli and other microbial contaminants along the way. They will be far ahead of Indonesia when they get this system properly certified moving forward, which is just around the corner and will be aggressively followed up by the newly elected government. So that's the bottom line there. Some great things are happening. Big challenges ahead of us. I encourage everyone to do their best to stay engaged. I know it's a slog. Speak out at these hearings. Sign up for them. I thought the Utah hearing was magnificent, although we didn't get the right outcome. The messages were heard, and so we encourage everyone to stay on that and keep the faith on this. We appreciate all of the consumers that are working diligently in order to protect this creative marketplace. And through your efforts, we're going to be successful as we have been in the past. So thanks to everyone. Appreciate your time. And we look forward to the next occasion when we have time to talk on these things, on issues that are doing. And we'll schedule these as frequently as we can, accommodate on schedules so that you're up to date on what's happening in the States. Thanks, everyone, for your time tonight.